The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
What's up, everyone? Another Secondhand Schmecondhand pickup coming up today. But before we get to that, I should probably mention a few very important things about all this secondhand game hunting type stuff that I've been doing lately. Much like the Ashen's pastiches, this isn't going to become a regular feature on this channel. It's going to be something that I do every so often and take breaks from and whatnot. As you can see, I've got a lot of games on this shelf, and most of these games are part of my backlog of games that I haven't beaten yet. Am I pathetic or what? So, one of the issues that I'm having right now with all of this game hunting is that it's not helping my problem any. I'm spending too much time trying to find cheap games and not enough time playing through what I have! I know there's other people that are having problems like this, but it doesn't need to be this way. Season 1 of The Apprentice. Actually, this thing still works. It's got Donald Trump says you're fired if you shine enough light on it. Yeah. You're fired. There we go. 10 years later, and I got this thing secondhand 10 years ago. Yeah, so that's the thing. Much like the Ashen's pastiches, if I don't want to make videos just to make videos. That's been the way I do things the whole time I've been doing this kind of stuff. You know, I want stuff to be inspired, and well, that's sticking out. I'm gonna push that link crossbow thing back in. I don't want these videos to ever feel uninspired, or like I'm just doing them to get them over with, or to adhere to a certain schedule. So, this is not going to be a regular thing. I got to take some time to actually play through what I have, and I've got plenty to play through. Oh, and this is just the disc-based games. We're not even looking at the cartridge drawer yet. There's some of my backlog in there, too, from some of the SNES games, the N64 games, and NES games that I've been picking up. And, well, I've beaten Mickey Mania before, so I know at least that I have that beaten, and it's not really part of my backlog. So, yeah. Anywho, let's take a look at what I picked up. So, at the beginning of the week, I went and placed a few orders on some e-tailer, retro gaming e-tailers sites, looking mostly for stuff on sale or stuff in clearance bins, like the pushover that I got from DK Oldies earlier. I'm going to check out East Starland a little later on, maybe sometime in September, because I'm thinking of trading some games with them, but we'll see how this all works out. So the JJ Games order came in, but I'm still waiting for the Lukey Games order. The Lukey Games order is going to be late, because and I think I know why. I mean, it's sad that it takes longer for something to go from Florida to Connecticut than Colorado to Connecticut, but Lukey Games made the oh-so-horrible mistake of going with DHL as their courier for this order. Now, DHL around here has nowhere near the presence of UPS and FedEx, and they're cynically referred to as day-and-a-half late. Well, because this went out day-and-a-half late, the lovely folks at day-and-a-half late brought the package to the wrong post office to switch it over to the postal service for the last leg of the journey. Around here, because of issues with people not wanting boxes left out on their porches all day or having to chase down a UPS truck when they get one of those "we couldn't deliver your package" things, nearly everything nowadays goes through the postal service, and you get a "hey, there's something you can pick up at the post office" card when something comes in. Unfortunately, the knuckleheads at day-and-a-half late decided to drop everything off at the wrong... Well, maybe they did it for fuel reasons, or there wasn't enough mail coming out here to the middle of nowhere for them to make the journey worthwhile, but they dropped everything off at the wrong town's post office, and now that post office is going to transfer it to this town's post office for the last leg of the journey, and I'm not going to see this stuff before Tuesday. Rubbish. Anywho, let's go over the other orders instead. Now, from JJ Games, didn't get any of that. From JJ Games, I got not a jumper pack. This is the jumper pack from my N64 that is finally out of the console after years and years and years, because I finally got an expansion pack for the N64. Yay! Cool! Awesome! So, yeah. Now, I've known about these things for the last, years and years. It's been nearly 15 years. I've known about these things since they first came out, never got around to getting one, never had any games as a kid that really benefited from the expansion pack. But Dirty Bike 64, interestingly enough, is my first ever game that benefits from this pack, and one of the Luki orders games is going to benefit as well. So cool! Finally, after all these years, a jumper pack. The jumper pack is out, and I finally have an expansion pack. Now, I went with a first-party one, even though it would be like 15 years old, because I've heard that third-party expansion packs for the N64 have problems, not unlike third-party other stuff, like the Tomy controller I picked up with the big dead zone on the thumbstick. So I understand that third-party expansion packs have this issue with basically overheating and nearly melting the consoles they're in. So I went with a first-party one to not take the risks on that. And, cool, an NES controller. I finally have a working NES controller, except this isn't the one that I got from JJ's. Well, the exterior with the big huge scratch on the front and the D-pad that's nearly as rock hard as the one on the Retro Duo controller is from JJ's, but the insides of this thing are from the dud that I bought from some random person on Amazon several years ago. Basically, since the dud that I had looked better than the JJ Games one, but the JJ Games one actually worked, I Frankensteined myself together a controller, which is now being used in my Retro Trio setup. Finally, I can play NES games with a proper NES controller. And this is now my new spare for parts. Anywho. Now we got some more stuff over here because I got out of work early on yesterday because of the holiday weekend coming up, and there wasn't really much going on, so I was able to get out of work early. So because I had some other things to take care of in that neck of the woods, I stopped by the secondhand place that I've been going to for quite some time and picked up Trojan on the NES and Championship Pool on the Super Nintendo, as well as some extension cables for the Nintendo 64 and the Sega Genesis. Now, one of the issues, of course, with the Retro Trio is that the cables that come with it are the cables that come with the built-in pack-in controllers are just too darn short. Oh, gotta get something here. Hold on a second. Alright, awkward camera angles over. Gotta get my report on how I did to talk about that stuff. So the Retro Trio's pack-in controllers, the cables are too short, and the N64 controller's cables are borderline too short, so I solved both problems by getting some extender cables. These were second-hand, though, much like everything else in that second-hand shop, and they were really dirty, so I cleaned them up and watched the paper towel that I cleaned them with turn solid black from all the dust residue that came off of these cables. Which is stupid because they go to all the trouble to repackage these things to hang them on their shelves, but they don't actually clean them off. It's not like it's that hard to run a wire through a wet paper towel to clean the gunk off of it. Again with these folks, not cleaning up their stuff. Alright, so on to the games. Championship Pool on the Super Nintendo in surprisingly good condition for something from this ratty place. This could pass as a cart that I've had since childhood. The label's still shiny and everything. A little bit of discoloration of the plastic going on the bottom, but that's a chemical reaction caused by the plastic that was used in these things back then, and other types of plastics as well. Over the years, these things start turning yellow and getting brittle and stuff, and my own Super Nintendo has a bottom piece that turned yellow after about 10, 11 years or so. So, yeah, well, there are some ways to get around that with, like, peroxide baths and working with harsh chemicals, but I don't really feel like going to all the trouble to replace this game anytime soon, because there's enough copies in the wild. Not like this is, like, Little Samson or anything. And then, Trojan. I already have the arcade version of this game in the Capcom Classics collections, but the NES version has its own, just like Pinbot, it's got its own little twist to it, so, and I remember it from my childhood, so I mostly picked it up. In very good shape, interestingly enough, and it's an older style NES cart that doesn't have the tabs, and it's got 5 screws on the back from when and the screws are not specialty screws either, they come out with flatheads, basically. Flathead screwdriver will take those out. It's interesting, they're actually, when Nintendo was first getting going and Nintendo was having trouble meeting demand, they kind of dropped their standards for proprietary stuff in some of their cartridges. In some cases, they actually took Famicom carts and they put in a little Famicom to NES adapter and put it in an NES controllers, or Famicom boards, I should say. Then with a Famicom to NES adapter, they put them inside. They put one of those inside NES cartridges and sold Famicom boards in NES carts. This isn't one of those carts. I've already checked, but it's cool to see an older NES cart around and stuff like that. So, how did I do here as far as these folks are concerned? Yeah, well, this secondhand place is a mixed bag. They've got some good points and some bad points, and that's the issue here, is because I get a lot more consistently good service from the e-tailers online than I get from the store. So that's why I'm not going out of my way to go there. I only stop by if there's something else that I'm doing in the area for the most part. I don't make dedicated trips out to that place, plus it's too far away. So I pretty much have to be doing something else in order to want to stop by that store, and until they change their business practices a little and maybe get a little more competitive with their pricing, I don't have much of a reason to go out there for, just to have a dedicated trip, especially when they're a secondhand store that might not have anything I want to buy because their inventory changes. Although not a lot, actually. This Trojan, for example, had been sitting there for about 3 weeks on their NES shelf, even in the good condition that it's in before I picked it up. And I think I know why it's been sitting there now that I've checked the numbers. So how did we do? The answer is not very good. I mean, when the sports game on the Super Nintendo is the score of the day, you know you've done very, very badly. So, N64 extension cable. And I've toughened my standards with some of these prices now. Instead of going, I realize that channels like Craigslist Game Finds, those guys, they're like, oh, well, eBay prices, eBay prices. I'm going a bit further. I'm using Google Shopping to aggregate all these internet prices and going with general internet prices and going with more general internet prices in terms of setting my standards and how well I did. Because, of course, Google Shopping aggregates stuff, not just, Google Shopping actually aggregates a few things. So they aggregate eBay as well. So it's a good place to check prices in a pinch, although I am kind of still getting used to it. But anyways, the internet price range for an N64 extension cable is $3 to $8. This one costs $5. Now I'm concerned about middle-of-the-road prices on cables, because cables are very popular among retailers in terms of ripping off people that don't know any better. Whether it's Best Buy with the super expensive monster cables, or other stores with super expensive monster cables, or all these places trying to basically snake oil sell cables like HDMI cables and stuff. It's outrageous just how much retail stores like to gouge people for cables when there's wholesalers like Monoprice that offer much more reasonable prices for what essentially are wires. But anyways, middle of the road on that. Also middle of the road on the Genesis extension cable too. Very narrow price range. Somebody's playing with a dirt bike. Very narrow price range, $5 to $7. This one was $6, so again in the middle. Yeah, lousy. The score of the day was Championship Pool, which goes for $2 to $12 online. People are trying to sell this thing for $12 on the internet. As some people would say, lol, the internet. Actual retail price, $4. And now the insult slash ripoff of the day, and the reason why this game did not sell, even though it's in better shape than most of their inventory, no doubt. Trojan on the NES is going for $4 to $8 in most corners of the internet. Now, these people like to brag about how they like to be competitive against the internet. Well, they're not convincing me with something like this. Range, $4 to $8. Actual retail price, $7. So, I'm noticing a trend here. The rip-offs of the day from this store, games like this one, Atari Anthology, etc., that aren't in ratty condition like most of their inventory, seem to always be the rip-offs of the day. So as much as they put up this front of flat pricing based on title and appearing to get picked clean, I'm going to have to go check their prices next time I'm there again to see if there's some shenanigans going on there. Or maybe they are kind of quietly doing some condition pricing, even though for the most part, because I've seen games in their display cases in varying conditions that are selling for the same price. It's crazy. Anyways, so that's the rip-off of the day, but that's not the biggest insult of the day. The biggest insult was the reason why I stopped by there was I was getting rid of my F-Zero X and Ocarina of Time on the N64, which were GameStop specials in lousy condition with torn stickers on the back that I eventually took the stickers off to not have it look so horrible. I take it to the store to trade it in, and they lowball insult me, only offering $15 for both of them. Now, that's a total insult, because based on how they price everything, in other words, they'll give you half in-store credit what they'd sell it for. It's pitiful. It really is. They give you half in-store credit for what they'd allegedly sell it for, and they like to, constantly reference the internet in terms of how they price, although they don't like gouging too much. But even with what the internet is selling F-Zero X and Ocarina of Time on the N64 for, that means I should have gotten $10 for the F-Zero X alone, and $15 for the Ocarina of Time N64. Instead, it was $15 for both. I'm going to see if I can spot those carts in their display cases when I go back and see if they're discounted because of the condition. The biggest insult was not the pricing, though, because there are some folks online that will not buy games with missing labels, and I didn't feel like messing with labels. I don't feel like messing with replacement labels just yet. But these folks, the biggest issue that I had with this whole thing is that I went in there, and the lady working there was complaining, was going on about the condition, because the label on the Ocarina of Time was a little ratty, and the label on, and I was missing a back label on F-Zero X. So, oh, the condition, but so many times I've walked into that place and I've seen stuff flat priced by title. There were a couple other copies of Trojan in the store that were around the same price, but in notably worse condition than this one. So I know they're big fans of flat pricing whenever they think they can get away with it. But to have all that flat pricing going on, and then I go there and it's, oh, condition, yeah. I'm going to remember this and see what they try to flip those for. And it's probably going to be the only time I ever trade in games to them. I'm looking at East Starland or some more developed, more formalized site that actually has better trade conditions than they do in terms of where I'm going to go next to get in terms of trading in games. But it won't be to these folks. So yeah, I got rid of 2 ratty copies of some N64 games, contributed to the problem of their inventory being really ratty, and have found out probably found out a reason why their inventory is so ratty. There's something else altogether. But because I have to back off for money reasons and having to play through my backlog reasons, because I have to back off on all of this game hunting for a bit, I don't intend on going back there too often, and I definitely will not be going out there unless there's something else I'm doing in that area. So, anyways, that's been our spread of pickups for the week, from scores to rip-offs, soup to nuts, whatever. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.